This is a supernatural vision that God sent to Don Bosco in the form of a dream in order to warn his Salesians and oratory boys against grumbling and disobedience. The Miracles and Prophecies of St. John Bosco, a project of America Needs Fatima. I'm your host, Matthew Miller. Subscribe for new episodes every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Don Bosco dreamed he was in a very large hall in Borgo San Salvario in Turin, where a number of men and women religious of different orders and congregations were all gathered together. As Don Bosco entered, all faced him, as though he had been expected. Among them he spotted a strange-looking man with his head swathed in a white turban and his body shrouded in some kind of cloak. When Don Bosco asked the identity of the man with that strange headgear, he was told that it was he himself. Perhaps it was an image of Don Bosco dreaming in his nightcap. He moved into that crowd of religious who smilingly encircled him in utter silence. He looked about in wonder, but all stared at him and kept smiling, still silent. "What are you up to?" he finally asked. "Are you mocking me?" "Mocking you?" they said. "Far from it. We're smiling and laughing because we have surmised why you came here." "How could you do that if I don't even know why I came here myself? Believe me, your behavior is quite surprising." "You came here," they all answered, "because you've just given your clerics a retreat at Lanzo." "And so? Now you come to find something to say for a closing talk." All right then, tell me what I should say, something that will foster the growth of the congregation of St. Francis de Sales. I shall be very much obliged." "We have only one suggestion. Tell your sons to beware of the phylloxera." For those who don't know, a phylloxera is an almost microscopic pale yellow sap-sucking insect related to aphids that feeds on the roots and leaves of grapevines. "The phylloxera? What's the phylloxera to do with it?" "Keep the phylloxera far from your congregation," they said, "and it will last a long time, flourish, and do great good for souls." "I don't understand." "Don't you? Why not? The phylloxera is the scourge which has wrought havoc in many religious orders and keep them from attaining their noble purpose. Your suggestion is useless to me unless you explain its meaning. I don't understand at all." "Then all your theological studies weren't worth your trouble," they said. "As you wish," replied Don Bosco. "I studied what I was supposed to study, but I never came across any mention of phylloxera in my theology books." "Ah, but it was there," they said. "Break the word down to its moral and spiritual meaning." "Well, the etymology of phylloxera has nothing even remotely resembling a spiritual meaning," replied Don Bosco. "Since you can't grasp this mystery, here comes someone who can explain it to you," they said. There was a jostling in the crowd, and way was made for a new personage to step forth. Don Bosco scrutinized him carefully, but couldn't remember having seen him before, although his friendly manners seemed to indicate that he was an old acquaintance. As soon as he drew nearer, Don Bosco told him, "You've come just in time to get me out of this embarrassing situation these people have put me in. They claim that the phylloxera is a threat against religious communities, and they want me to make the phylloxera the theme of my closing sermon of the retreat." "Don Bosco, you think you're so wise," said the man, "and you don't know these things? Yes, it's true that if you fight the phylloxera with all your might and teach your sons to do the same, your society won't fail to grow. Do you even know what the phylloxera is?" "Well, I know it's a blight which attacks plants and kills them by stunting their growth." "And what causes this blight?" "It's due to myriads of parasites which invade a plant." "How can neighboring plants be saved from the blight?" asked this strange man. "I have no idea." "Then listen carefully. The phylloxera first shows up on just one plant, but in a short time all nearby plants become infected, even those at a distance. Now, once this disease shows up in a vineyard or orchard or garden, it spreads like wildfire, and the beauty and crops you hoped for are ruined. Do you know how this blight spreads? Not by contact, because there's some distance between plants, nor by parasites crawling to the ground and going over to other plants. It has been proven that it is the wind which carries the curse to the branches of healthy plants so that disaster spreads rapidly. Well now, Know this, the wind of grumbling bears the phylloxera of disobedience far. Now do you understand? I'm beginning to. The harm caused by the phylloxera carried by this wind is beyond reckoning. In the most flourishing communities, it first undermines mutual charity, then zeal for the salvation of souls. Later, it fosters idleness and destroys all other religious virtues. And finally, scandal turns a community into an object of censure by God and man. There's no need for an infected member to go from one community to another. It's enough for this wind to blow from afar. Be convinced that this caused the destruction of certain religious orders. Don Bosco said, "Well, you're right. I see the truth of your words. But how can one remedy such a situation?" "Half measures aren't enough," said the man. "Radical action is needed. To check phylloxera, blighted plants used to be treated with sulfur, lime water, and other remedies, all to no avail, because phylloxera on a single plant can immediately infect an entire vineyard. From one vineyard, it spreads to others like wildfire, so that one area can soon infect an entire province or an entire realm. Do you want to know the one way to nip this evil in the bud? As soon as phylloxera appears on a plant, carefully cut it down along with the adjacent brush and burn everything. If the entire vineyard is infected, cut down all the vines and thoroughly burn them to save neighboring vineyards. Only fire can exterminate the blight. So also, when phylloxera appears in any community in the form of opposition to the superior's will, arrogant neglect of the rules, or contempt for the responsibilities of community life, don't delay. Raise that house to its foundation, get rid of its members, and don't yield to dangerous tolerance. And as you deal with a house, so deal with an individual. At times, you may think that a certain individual, if left to himself, will improve and return to the right path, or you may not like to punish someone because you love him, or because he has special skills or knowledge which you feel will bring credit to the congregation. But don't be swayed by such considerations. Rarely will people of this kind change their ways. I don't say that their conversion is impossible, but I maintain that it is rare. So rare indeed that this probability does not of itself give a justifiable reason to incline toward a more lenient decision. You may say that some of these persons will turn out worse by living in the world. So be it. They will bear full responsibility for their conduct, but your congregation will not have to suffer from it. What if, asked Don Bosco, being kept in the society, they might be coaxed back to the right path? Your assumption is worthless, the man responded. It's better to dismiss these haughty individuals than to keep them in the hope that they may sow seeds in the Lord's vineyard. Impress this principle upon your memory. Use it decisively when need arises. Treat of it in your conferences to your directors and make it the topic of your closing sermon of the retreat. Yes, I will, said Don Bosco. I thank you for your warning. Now tell me who you are. Don't you know me? He asked. Don't you recall how often you have seen me? While the stranger spoke, all the bystanders smiled. Just then the morning bell rang for rising, and Don Bosco awoke. He added that this dream had come on 3 consecutive nights, thus dispelling any suspicion that he had concocted this parable of sorts to give his own thoughts a fanciful dress. His mention of the strange headgear was an opener to humble himself, as he usually did, and to dispel any impression from his listeners' minds that this was a charismatic gift. In most of his dreams, Don Bosco encountered a man who acted as a guide and interpreter. This was this strange man at the end of the dream. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you'd like to hear about how Don Bosco was attacked by the devil after converting some Protestants, just click on the video above me here. And don't forget, if you'd like to enroll in our Saturday Mass intentions for the promoters of St. John Bosco, just click on this other link over here. God bless you, and Our Lady keep you.